Red is the New Revised Standard Version that I'll be reading from. There's a solid blue that's the NIV, and then there is the Message by Eugene Peterson, and there's also several children's Bibles. So pick one out that will to you and open it up to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew is the very first book in the New Testament, and open that up to Matthew 7. And I'm going to read the first 5 verses, so I'd like you to follow along, because this has to do with something that you and I don't do, so you might as well not listen to what I'm going to read about, and that is judging, right? So here's what Jesus says. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure that you give will be the measure that you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eyes, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, let me take the speck out of your eye, while the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. This is the word of the Lord. So Jesus is providing what is called the Sermon on the Mount, which what I would say is like being a disciple 101. So he's trying to give the basic overview, and he's been doing all these teachings that start off, blessed are, blessed are, blessed are these. And then suddenly he says, time out, don't judge. So it must be that Jesus, who obviously understands humankind very well, realizes that the way we judge other people, especially, can be a stumbling block for us being a follower of Jesus. You with me? So I was doing some reading, and there was a blog that I came upon that this person said the following. It says, I know I can change. After having changed so much in relation to my attitude, I know I have the ability to change and to stop placing so many judgments on others. It's important to remember that I'm talking about negative judgments here. Not all judgments are bad, and I agree with that. Not all judgments are hurtful or painful or do wrong, but most of them are. And those are the ones I want to stop. I want to be a happy person, and judging others does not make me happy, ever. I know, as the quote above says, that it's up to me to make the change. No one is going to put an end to my judging for me. Just like happiness, it's up to me to make the change. I'm pretty darn sure this won't be easy. I have been judging others for a long, long time. It's going to take a lot, and I mean a lot of work for me to realize that what I'm doing and to stop it before it happens. Judging others is something that we do, whether we're aware of it or not. We make judgments when we enter into the Peterson Chapel as to who we're going to stand next to, or who we're going to talk to, or who we're not going to talk to. We make judgments about whether you like my tie, which you all do. We make judgments about hairstyle. We make judgments about coats. We make judgments about behaviors. We all do that. Judgments are not necessarily evil or wrong in and of themselves, but they can be. And more often than not, I think that when we make judgments, we're doing a couple of things. We're checking our vision, and I think it's really important, and that's why the children's time ties into this, is that I think before we make judgments, we have to ask ourselves, what are we really seeing? And then secondly, as we check our own vision, the next thing I think we have to do is to say, when we judge another person, we're actually saying more about ourselves than we are about them. Somebody once said that when you point a finger at someone else, you're pointing 3 at yourself. And there's a lot of truth to that. And a lot of times, we may or may not be aware of this, and that's why being attentive to what we're thinking and feeling at any moment in time is so important, because a lot of times when we judge another person, we have to first of all ask ourselves the question, what is this saying about me? Is this something that I'm insecure about? We judge somebody else's clothing and we may say, gee, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with the way that I'm dressed. Or we judge another person's behavior and we realize that that behavior is far too much like our own behaviors. So this process of judging, Jesus says, we really need to take this seriously. And before we look at something small in another person that might be an irritant, we need to ask ourselves, what is blocking our vision? What is blocking our vision? So he refers to it as a log. So this big contrast between the log that's in our eye and the little speck that's in the other person's eye creates this tension of judging and the way in which we judge other people. I think that Jesus is giving us a heads up about how we are to live as kingdom people, as disciples. He was teaching people how to be a follower of himself. And he said, what you need to do is be careful about the way you judge other people. So Martin Buber, I don't know how many of you read Martin Buber last week, but he's written a book that's called I, Thou. And he was a Jewish theologian, and I admire that book a lot. And what he did is he differentiates the difference between treating people as thous or treating people as its. And so how this gets tied into what I'm talking about is that when we make a judgment about other people, many times what we're doing is we're treating them as an it, as an object, as a thing, rather than as a thou. And I think what Jesus is teaching in the Sermon on the Mount is that he wants us to treat each other as thous. We don't have to like how another person is dressed. We don't have to like their behavior necessarily. We don't even have to like their attitudes, their values, or whatever. But we're called to do what? To love them. And to demonstrate a higher road of behavior, offering a different variety of choices. So Susie and I I had a medical test. Everything was fine on Friday. So we entered the elevator over at Northwest Community at 6:15 in the morning. And there was a gentleman that was on the elevator, and I said good morning to him, and he said good morning. And we got up to the floor, and we got off before he did, and I turned around and said, I hope you have a really good day. And he said, yeah, I hope you two have a really good day as well. We went around the corner of the garage, the elevator door shut, and Susie said to me, why did you talk to him? First of all, Susie's not a morning person. She didn't even want to talk to me, let alone. And I said, because I sort of felt that it might make his day a little better if I affirmed him and just took a moment to acknowledge that it was a human being. I could have treated him as an it and never said a word to him, just let him sit in the back of the elevator. Maybe that's what he wanted, I have no clue. But I saw that he was a human being, he was a thou to me. And so I made the decision to affirm that he was a person. And I don't know about you, but it makes a big difference. So this nurse came up to give me an IV, and I figured, what can I do to make this go better? And so I looked at her, and she had the most beautiful teeth. And I said to her, you have the most beautiful teeth. And she said, oh, no one's ever told me that before. Didn't change a thing. But afterwards, when I was in recovery, I think, if I remember correctly, Susie told me this because you don't remember these things, she came up to me and she said, I just want you to know that what you said to me made my morning. An innocent little judgment to affirm a human being. So I think this is what Jesus is talking about, that we encounter, at least I encounter every single day, people that we make judgments about. We can treat them as its, as things, or we can try to engage with them as a human being. We don't have to agree with the way they're living their lifestyle, but I think we have to try to find ways to connect with them so that we can show them the kind of love, unconditional love, that God is calling us to be and to do. So I was thinking about what judgment does, and I came up with 5 things that judging other people and creating its can do. Maybe you have some more. The first thing it can do is to hurt other people. I could have said to that nurse, "You're really ugly." You know, what would that have done? You know, she wasn't, but I could have said that. The second thing that making a judgment does is make you feel worse about yourself. The third thing it does is to perpetuate stereotypes. The fourth thing it does is to put negativity into the world. And the last thing it does is encourages us to judge ourselves. And maybe you can think of other things that the tendency to judge others does. But I think, as I was thinking about it, when Jesus does this little timeout, I think he's saying, if you want to be a follower of mine, first thing you have to do is check your eyesight, make sure what you see is what you are really seeing. Secondly, get in touch with your own self. What are your values? What is it in you that's triggering you to want to make a response? So somebody cuts you off in your driving, and when that happens to me, I have things that I'd like to say well, I'm not going to tell you what I would say. But when I do it, it's like, oh yeah, I just needed to I didn't want to wait for that long line of cars. You know what I mean? So it can inject negativity into a situation, some things that are very simple. So I think what Jesus is saying here, keep our eyesight clear. Secondly, make sure we understand what our own values are. And then thirdly, is there a way to create a thou in the encounter that you are having in the midst of judging others? Judging is not going to change another person's behavior. It's not going to change things for them. But reaching out in love and trying to connect with that person might develop a relationship where God then can get into it. And God can make the changes that God, I think, needs and wants to do. It's not for us to judge, it's for God to judge and for God to help change behaviors. So Jesus says, do not judge. Take that log out of your own eye before you are so concerned about the speck in the other eye. And I think if we do that, we're a little bit closer to being the kind of Jesus follower that Jesus wants us to be. So let's work at it. Let me know how your judging goes this week. We're all going to do it, but maybe we can make it a little bit more pleasing to God in the process. Amen.